Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're surviving the frickin' cold winter, and if you are here, cheers to you, because in the latest installment of Have You Heard About, we're off on a quest to the cold world of the Mooseman. The Mooseman is a small project with a 2-hour runtime and largely developed by the two-man studio Morteshka out of Perm, Russia. There's a lot to unpack with that simple description of the game, so I want to take a second. Yes, it's short, totally short. I doubt you will spend more than 3 hours with this title. 2 hours might even be generous. This leans heavily on the indie side of independent. I think you can identify it as a labor of love and a very important and specific ethnic mythology, but this isn't Stardew Valley. And third, it's Russian. Yeah, Perm. If you're like me, and you're knee-deep in the glorious alt history simulator of Crusader Kings 2, you might recognize the name. Perm is the ethnic indigenous peoples that inhabit what I guess you might call Central Russia, but it's a part of a broader Finno-Ugric ethno-language group. So in this mix of the Mooseman, we also have some solid inspiration of the Sami people, which you might recognize as one of those muses from that little Disney movie from a few years back. There's a lot going on already here with the background of the game. I know. It makes these kinds of titles super difficult to evaluate because the construction of the game is almost as important as the game itself. And we'd be kidding ourselves if we as gamers or game critics or nerds or whatever didn't take account into the background of a title into how much we love or hate a thing. So, the Mooseman. Some have described it as a walking simulator, and I really struggle with that kind of genre or that kind of term. At best, I find it cynically honest, and at worst, I find it kind of reductive. You walk a lot in a lot of games, and a lot of cutscenes, and a lot of AAA games are just you kind of walking around, and we don't have to go down the trail of Assassin's Creed and those follow the conversation moments, which are honestly, you're just walking in the most agonizing way possible. But I guess it's because in Mooseman, for the most part of what you do is walk. But it's also really less about pressing D on the keyboard, and it's more so being immersed in the haunting atmosphere of the game. If you've touched games before like Journey or Abzu or Never Alone or maybe even Limbo, these are probably titles that have the closest comparison as to the feel of Mooseman. There's a huge emphasis on atmosphere. Mooseman is awashed in hues of grey, black, and blue with the splashes of brilliant white lighting. It transitions from the slow, steady march of the hero and the surrounding misery of the bleak, hellish landscape to these almost angelic moments of illumination. I really enjoyed the art style and the feel. And if you know that Ridley Scott intro animation that you get, when you're about to watch one of his movies, that's the kind of style of how Mooseman plays out. I think it's brilliant and beautiful, and I haven't seen it in a lot of games, so I really latched onto that in this title here. The colors and the animation design links wonderfully with the throat singing and the ethnic choruses we encounter along our journey, and the Russian voice actors that encants the tale in between missions or levels does an amazing job, and it really helps us listen to the story in a kind of mesmerizing, cuddle up by the campfire sort of way.
Отир свет и ен лиш мир, юн кунтис.
But I suppose we can't just gush about the atmosphere of a game all day. We need to really evaluate what you do in it, because that's what a game is, I guess, right? And truthfully, you aren't really doing a whole lot in the Mooseman. There's only really 2 gameplay mechanics that the game is built around. By pressing the spacebar, if you play this on PC, you transition between the physical world and the spiritual world. This lets you manipulate objects that you need to move out of your way or move across to fill a gap in a hill or move so you can continue to advance along your path, or to outrun spirits like Osh the bear that guards the Permic underworld. The second mechanic that you get maybe halfway into the title is by pressing X, you activate your staff and your staff lights up. You retrieve this when you enter the lower world in the Mooseman. All this really does, though, as a gameplay mechanic, is it lets you deflect incoming blows from monsters, such as Varkul and other wandering malevolent spirits. Most of the game is kind of based around these two things. There's puzzles that come along that require you to interact with spirits and animals using these two methods. And really, everything that you interact with in the Mooseman is either an animal or a spirit of an animal, which really is a nice way of reflecting upon like what this game is about and when this game is set. Sometimes Mooseman is a little vague on what you have to do. Sometimes I found it actually a little tricky too. There was one moment when you're trying to hide from a giant fish monster who wants to eat your face by manipulating floating logs using spirit powers so that you can remain hidden and out of its line of sight. And it was a little tricky. It was a little clever. I have to give props there that I didn't find everything very straightforward and linear and easy. But I'm not honestly the best person to evaluate what makes a good puzzle or not. I'm the kind of kid who had the printed out walkthrough to try to get through Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening because I had absolutely no idea when I was 6 years old on what I was trying to do. In terms of why you're on this journey, well, I don't want to give the whole story away. I think it's important that you kind of experience it as fresh-eyed as you possibly can. But in essence, you are the Mooseman. You are an individual who has to retrieve Shondi's or the sun's light from the lower world, which is like the underworld, and bring it back to the heavens or the upper world in order to end the blistering winter. So you're kind of like a groundhog who does want to see his shadow. The strength of Mooseman's motivation is deeply rooted as an ethnic mythology. This is a story that I've never heard before, never experienced before, and much like Never Alone, which is a story about an Innu girl in North America, it really makes this kind of stuff difficult to evaluate as a critic, as a reviewer, as somebody who just wants to talk about games. Sure, some people might say that this mythology is a slight variation on other mythologies that we've heard, whether it's in the Middle East or in Europe or in Asia or elsewhere. It's the story of a man who has to travel to the land of the dead to retrieve something to return balance to the world. Sure, yeah, I suppose, but I can't say I've ever heard this as a uniquely Permic story. And playing the Mooseman allowed me to experience this in what I think is a really deeply authentic way. Which is why, for Quest Marker, I have to give this a neutral score. If any of what I said is of a remote interest to you, I heartily encourage you to give it a try. It might open your eyes a little. But if you're not into anything of what I just said, I think that's totally fair too. I hope this isn't a cop-out, but these styles of games I always find deeply divisive. Can we evaluate a game that is brilliant solely on how it makes us feel, but isn't really much of a game? I don't know. As a brief aside, when this review goes live, I'll also be uploading the first 12-ish minutes of the Mooseman with no voiceover or bad jokes or anything, if you want to get a better feel. And I'm planning on starting to do this for most of my reviews going forward, if only to have a public record of some of these lesser known or discussed titles. I guess I want to leave you guys with the question, are games art or games? Can you have art games or games of art? How does this work? Is this a fun game? I don't know if it's a fun game, but I'm not going to forget Mooseman. So frick, I don't know, pick it up on sale, play it with your cat, and then get back to me.